Hi, it's Katie Kimball from Kitchen Stewardship, and I am here talking with Dr. Judene Benoit, who is a dentist in Canada, about my cavities because I had a couple small cavities and took some x-rays and then did a cavity remineralizing diet attempt, and 3 months later, the x-rays hadn't changed at all. So I was incredibly discouraged and disappointed, and I am just trying to dig in and be a real food detective here and figure out what is maybe really going on in my mouth. Hey, Dr. Judene, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to hear your perspective because I know you've seen a lot of healed cavities and have a lot of experience in the subject. Can you tell us a bit about your background, please?
Sure. I'm a dentist in Canada, and I've been a dentist for 7 years. I joined my father's dental office, and he's been helping people remineralize their teeth and cavities for 40 years. So I've been really fortunate to be able to see 40 years worth of active and arrested decay, and it's been a really great learning experience for me.
I bet. So you use some terms there, active and arrested decay. So let's just start by defining those so that we all understand what you're talking about.
Okay, so cavities can either be active or arrested. An active cavity is when there's continual demineralization. Demineralization is the removal of minerals. So in an active cavity, the cavity is growing and it is not good. An arrested cavity is when there was an active cavity at some point, there was demineralization or the removal of minerals at some point, but it has since been remineralized and the minerals are put back into the tooth. The tooth structure does not regrow or become replaced, but the minerals become replaced and the tooth is hard and healthy and healed, and the cavity is said to be arrested. So the proper dental terms for this is are arrested decay or arrested cavities and remineralized cavities. Dentists don't usually use the word healed for these cavities, but that's what people, when they say they want a healed cavity, they're talking about, in proper dental terms, they're talking about they want an arrested cavity, a remineralized cavity.
Okay, so on an x-ray, does an active cavity and an arrested cavity look any different?
No, they don't actually. So
okay.
yeah. So I like to say, I know it's really kind of gross thing to think about, but if you accidentally cut your fingertip off, when the finger heals, the fingertip doesn't grow back, but the surface is hard, it's not at risk of an infection, the wound is not growing, it's a healed finger, but the fingertip does not grow back. And if you were to take an x-ray or a picture of it, you wouldn't see the missing fingertip, but you would have a healed finger, right?
Exactly. So is an arrested cavity at any more risk of, continuing to decay or becoming, a new cavity than any other spot on my teeth?
Absolutely not. And I'm so excited that you have this question and you're doing this this interview with me, because so many people worry about arrested decay and they think that, oh, because it was once an active cavity, it's more likely to become an active cavity again. And this is totally not true.
Huh.
An arrested cavity is either at the same risk of becoming a cavity as the rest of your teeth, or it's actually at less risk of becoming a cavity again.
Why?
Because, well, studies have shown that that can be the case, that when a tooth is remineralized, that it can actually be harder than the rest of the teeth.
Huh.
So it's either same risk or less risk. So it's all good. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're not the only one to have that fear. I see tons of people who come in and I'm like, celebrate, come on, you've got arrested decay, celebrate. And they're like, oh, but I'm scared it's going to become an active cavity again. But it's time to celebrate.
Okay.
So
the trick is, and I'm going to screen share my x-ray right now, the x-ray from this week. The trick is, how do we know if it is arrested or active then? So here's my X-ray, and I think you can see my mouse. Or wait, no, there. This is the deeper cavity right there on the top far right tooth, but on the left-hand side of that tooth. And then there's a more shallow cavity on the second tooth from the right, also on its left-hand side. Apparently I'm a crooked brusher, I don't know. And my dentist said that this smaller one could remineralize because it's just in the outer layer of the tooth, but that the deeper one is a big problem. And he said there's no way that that could heal. So
Okay.
yeah, what do you see?
Okay. Oh, so many things to say. All right. Okay, where do I start? Diagnosing, when you asked how do you diagnose the difference between active and arrested decay, and it's a complex thing, and it can only be diagnosed by a dentist, and it's when you have a cavity that's only visible in an X-ray, like it's different when you can see it with the naked eye. But in a situation like yours, where you only can see the cavity in an X-ray, diagnosing it is a complex, lengthy process. You can't just take a screenshot of one-time look at the cavity and say, yes, it's active, or yes, it's arrested, when it's only visible in an X-ray.
Okay.
You have to, and I read what you wrote about what your dentist said, and your dentist wanted to take an X-ray in a year's time, and you previously had X-rays done as well, and that's exactly the right way that you're supposed to diagnose cavities that are only visible in an X-ray. And like when I look at my my dental school textbooks, this is how you do it, because it's a lengthy, it's not that fun. Like you can't just go in one time to a dental office and have it diagnosed right then and there. Like you can sometimes when it's visible to your eye or to the dentist's eye, you can sometimes have that exciting, you're like, yes. But when you have it only visible by an X-ray, you have to do multiple X-rays and over time. And if the cavity never grows, then it can be diagnosed or concluded to be arrested. If it grows a teeny tiny bit, it's an active cavity.
Okay.
And then active cavities can grow, or they definitely do progress at different speeds for different people, or even at different times in people's lives. So if you have an active cavity, then another thing the dentist has to determine is how quickly is it progressing. Some people have quickly or very rapidly progressing cavities, and some people have very slowly progressing cavities.
Okay.
So and then I know it's not that fun to think about having to take multiple X-rays. There are some now coming onto the market. There are some adjunctive technologies that dentists can use to help, either instead of or in addition to X-rays. But the gold standard way is to use X-rays periodically to see what's going on.
Sure. And once a year, I mean, once a year is pretty standard. So we're not saying like, oh, you better go in every 60 days, right? Like as long as, so I've now seen that it really hasn't changed in 3 months. So no problem to wait a year and see what's going on as long as I don't have a ton of tooth pain, right?
Yeah, that's like, in my dental school textbook, it suggests 3 months to have your cavities monitored at the dentist every 3 months. And 3 months is a good amount of time because, it's not a lot of time. If worst case scenario, if the cavity is active and it's progressing, 3 months is not enough. Usually, unless people have really rapidly progressing cavities, usually it's not enough time for disaster to strike. But so it's a good amount of time, 3 months. But in my book, I say, you leave that up to your dentist. Your dentist suggested 1 year, and I think that's perfect.
Okay. That's interesting. Well, I'm so curious because his theory on when my cavity started was he's like, oh, these cavities probably like happened way back in college when you were drinking a lot of soda, which actually I've never been a soda drinker. So he was off the mark there. But my diet in college was far, far, far from optimal. And so he was kind of saying that like digital x-rays are so much better than the older style. I hadn't had x-rays in like 2 years, and I'm not sure, it was a different dentist, so I'm not sure if they were digital or not. So he was kind of saying that like you've probably had these forever and they just are showing up now. My own theory when I first, because this was our conversation just last week, my own theory in January, 3 months ago, was that I was just like 2 months postpartum when I had the cavities first showing up on the x-rays. And so I thought, well, I know pregnancy and breastfeeding can really kind of pull a lot of everything from your body, minerals and energy, everything else. And so I kind of figured that, and like maybe some of my poor eating habits and, you know, not brushing as much when I'm juggling a baby all the time might have caused them like in the last year. So that was really interesting to me to hear that he thought they might have been around for 10 years. Do you know of any risk factors for developing cavities like pregnancy or certain dietary things that you would point to?
Well, certainly, definitely the you know, the overall health of an individual is related to cavities and how quickly they progress, whether they're quick or slow. So certainly any of those things that you mentioned can be related. I was just going to say, so you had x-rays taken, like, okay, it's definitely possible. I agree with the dentist that it's very possible that those cavities started when you were like many years ago, in which case they would be arrested. Like if they started many years ago and they still haven't grown, they were like that whatever number of years ago and they're like that now, I mean, that's awesome. You should be celebrating. That's arrested decay.
Right. So I need to get copies of, I need to work on getting copies of my x-rays from 2 years ago.
Yeah. To say that you have arrested, well, I can't diagnose it just looking, you know, over the computer. Like your dentist would have to be the one to diagnose it. But just looking at those 2 x-rays, you know, that's a good sign, and it's like very likely that it's arrested decay. But if you can get a hold of your previous x-rays, then your dentist can like definitely say, oh yeah, that's arrested decay. That's
if they were there.
If they were there, yeah. Mm-hmm. If your dentist is correct about them starting way back then they would be there and they wouldn't look any different than they do now. If they weren't there, then you would know that you had active decay at some point more recently, and then to determine whether it's arrested or not, then you move forward taking periodic x-rays and see if it changes. And if it doesn't, perfect.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm guessing that they won't show up even if I do get the x-rays from 2 years ago, because that dentist wasn't exactly holistic. I'm sure he would have jumped at the chance to fill them right then and there, you know, if they had been there. But if it was maybe a lower quality x-ray, I don't know if the digital x-rays are that much more clear. That's what the dentist is saying now, that it could just be, you know, new technology. We're seeing things that he didn't used to be able to see in his patients, which is kind of interesting. You wonder, what happened to all those poor people who had cavities that they couldn't see? I guess they got better, you know, right? They must have gotten better or something.
But it's not necessarily, like, I was just going to say, like, when you said your previous dentist would have jumped at the opportunity to fill them because they weren't holistic, like, not necessarily, because dentists, that, like, this is like a conventional thing, like how you choose to remineralize your teeth or cavities, that can fall into, like, there's more conventional ways like fluoride, or there's more, you know, there's different ways like nutrition. But the concept of remineralizing cavities is like, it's taught in dental school. I mean, there's nothing unusual about that. So, yeah, they could have been there and your dentist could have seen them, but maybe not. Maybe they were active recently too. I just want to clarify that it's not like this unusual concept, remineralizing cavities. And then dentin remineralization is also, it's a fact. I mean, so I was reading in your email, like you had mentioned like the outer surface. So the outer surface is enamel. Mm-hmm. And underneath enamel, like, which makes up most of the tooth, is something called dentin. So cavities can become arrested in both enamel and dentin. So
Okay, I'll put the X-rays up again. So this kind of darker, this darker part on the outside is the enamel.
That's right.
And then all the rest of the inside, other than the pulp where the nerve is the dentin?
Exactly.
All the thick part. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good to understand.
So dentin and enamel can be mineralized, and cavities can become arrested in both enamel and dentin.
Okay.
That's a fact. That's in my dental school textbooks. But dentin remineralization is like a lot more difficult than enamel, and that location in between your teeth is a very, very challenging location. So combining two very, very challenging things, like in between the teeth and dentin involvement, that's a very, very challenging cavity to remineralize. Okay. And so that's what you hear, you know, dental, like it's risky. It's risky for all parties involved. It's risky for the person, like, you know, most people, well, I shouldn't say most people because that's changing, but a lot of people don't want to do a diet change or whatever, right? So it's risky if that cavity grows, they're gonna have problems happen, right? Sure. And it's risky for the dentist. They don't want to get sued, you know, people, because it does happen, right? I've had dentists tell me that they don't want to, you know, help people monitor their cavities because they're scared they're going to get sued because if a problem happens. So
yeah, we live in a kind of a complicated society when it comes to that. In my case, so after I went in 3 months ago and came home with cavities, I was super dejected, like, oh, I'm a failure. My health must be, you know, I try to eat really, really well. I'm a real food blogger here and my health is so poor. I let my teeth, you know, decay. That's horrible. And so I embarked on, I felt bad, but I like a challenge. So that's great that I have a super hard one to remineralize. We can see if it works. So what I did is I embarked on kind of a cavity healing diet by adding things like cod liver oil and more milk and grass-fed butter and vitamin D to my diet, and omitting high phytic acid foods like all grains, legumes, and chocolate because it's a bean, and sugar. And so I did that for about 50 days. And I was hopeful. I mean, I was hopeful that they would like totally be gone, but I didn't really know what I was looking for. So I'm really curious from your perspective, Dr. Judene, and I think this is the final question because here's the real meat of the issue. How do you remineralize cavities? Like, what do you tell your patients if they have one? Especially, apparently, I have a very tricky, challenging one. That's awesome. What's my next step? Like, because I came home and I started eating chocolate. I was like, forget this. I'm having a pity party. But if you tell me otherwise, I'll put it back in the cupboard.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want to say you should be celebrating. It's all good news. I mean, it's a very challenging spot and it hasn't grown. So, but you're not alone. Like a lot of people are like afraid to celebrate but you really should be. Like, it's all good. Yeah. Everything is all good.
Would you have expected in just an average patient to have seen some change in the rate of decay in 3 months?
No, not a lot. I mean, you can see some, but definitely people do have progression in 3 months' time, but not a lot, right? Because that's like the safe number, 3 months. Like you shouldn't expect to have too much, because if you did, then that's like, you know, you're at risk of having problems, and dentists are supposed to be helping monitor these cavities every 3 months according to proper protocol. But some people have really rapidly progressing cavities, and they will progress in less than 3 months. So I think for you, it's all good. Like, you don't have any progression at this point, and that's good. I mean, it's all that you could hope for at this point. If you had progression, that would be really unfortunate. That would be, you know, and then you could be sad.
Yeah, hashtag fail.
I think that people misunderstand when they say they want a cavity to heal. They think it's going to completely fill in. Like you're going to take an X-ray and then all of a sudden there's going to be, the cavity is going to be totally gone. But that's not what happens. That's not what arrested, decay, and remineralized cavities do.
Now, in the enamel, can the enamel remineralize and actually fill in and just not the dentin, or neither?
Neither. But okay, so when like dental professionals say that a cavity has healed, like healing is a proper dental term, but it's only used when the cavity is so small that it's in the enamel and has not broken through the enamel. So there's no hole. So just a small amount of demineralization has occurred, and then it's then remineralized. That's when proper dental terms say that the cavity is reversed or healed.
Okay.
Proper dental terms. But you know, most people, when they say they want their cavity to heal, they're not talking about those tiny little cavities. They're talking about like a hole in the tooth, and the hole does not fill in. Like your missing fingertip does not grow back, but the finger's healed, right? You know, that's like, I use the word healed because that's what people, they understand. It's like saying a radiograph or an X-ray is a picture. You know, we're going to take a picture of your tooth. Like, it's not a proper dental term, but people know what it means. So that's what. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so you're asking how to.
What do I do?
I wrote a whole book on this. It's hard for me to answer that in one sentence.
Well, do you go topical or internal with your recommendations, or both?
Okay, I do both.
Okay.
So what dentists learn, what I learned in dental school, is that a cavity is caused by bacteria plus a susceptible tooth equals a cavity. So and really that's a common theme for many diseases and conditions. So like, you know, a skin bacterial infection, the bacteria plus a susceptible skin, a susceptible individual, and then you're gonna get the disease or condition. So yeah, so I take approach for both of those things, like the bacteria thing and the susceptible tooth, the susceptible individual. That's how I go about it.
So hold up your book again. Let's get a little plug here. I'm gonna How to Stop Cavities, very simple title. So I need to go read your book, is what you're saying. I can do that.
Well, sure. I mean, one thing I like to talk about, just because I find it so fascinating, is something called matrix metalloproteinases. And okay, so MMPs for short, matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs for short. And I like to compare MMPs to a gardener. So you have a beautiful garden, right? But the flowers die and the leaves, they go brown, right? So the gardener goes around and picks off all of the dead flowers and the brown leaves. And this is a healthy process for the garden because it allows new flowers to grow, allows the flowers to be healthy, the plants to grow better. So the damaged parts need to be removed in order for healthy growth and function. And that's what matrix metalloproteinases, they're a group of enzymes in all throughout the body, including in our teeth and in our mouths. And what they do is they go and remove damaged parts of the body, including within the teeth. So this is a great connection between the bacteria and the susceptible tooth thing, because when bacterial acids cause demineralization from the tooth, the removal of minerals, that causes damage in the tooth. And that damage needs to be cleared by MMPs, these enzymes, like the gardener, right? To help the tooth be healthy, you need to remove the damaged parts. Well, what happens in a garden, when the gardener's boss is away, the gardener just keeps on clipping away at the dead flowers, and then he moves on to the live, the good flowers, and then soon the whole plant's gone and the garden is destroyed when there's nothing to stop him. And that's the same with MMPs. They are good because they need something needs to clear this damage, but what happens if there's no inhibitors of matrix metalloproteinases or MMP inhibitors?
Okay.
Continual damage occurs. So this has been shown to be directly correlated to the progression, the speed of progression of cavities within dentin.
Okay.
So an excess of MMPs and too little MMP inhibitors will result in continual degradation of the tooth and progression of a cavity, and particularly a quickly progressing cavity has been shown to be linked to this discrepancy.
Okay, so if I get your book, I can find out what things to eat or put on my teeth to inhibit MMPs, and then I can put it in my post.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, for sure. Yes, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Benoit. Is that right, Dr. Benoit?
Yes.
That was bad of me not to check beforehand. My French is a little, rusty. Thank you very, very much for meeting me, Dr. Benoit. And I'm really excited to share this with the kitchen stewardship community. And what I'd like to do is I'm just going to kind of send you the checklist of the things that I did to try to remineralize. And I would love to just have you kind of say like, yes, or no, like, yes, that was a good idea, or like, no, that's not going to do anything. Like, why would you stand on your head? That wasn't on there, but I'm sure some of them on there were probably just kind of like internet quackery maybe. And I'm excited to hear your opinion if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I can help. Yeah. I do want to say just one thing though. Like I've seen a lot of arrested decay and a lot of remineralized teeth and cavities, and there is not one particular type of thing that people do, or there's not one right diet and one wrong diet. I mean, people have to come to that conclusion maybe for their overall health. Like definitely there might be something that's right, a diet that's right for them to follow or not. But when it comes to the teeth, like there's a lot of right things that people can do. Definitely there's a lot of wrong things, I guess. A lot of people do have active decay.
Sure.
But I think that that there's a lot of hope for people because they don't have to feel like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. Like it's a doable thing for people, and it's not this like crazy challenging thing. I mean, certainly some cavities are, like, I don't want to make people mislead people, but having a healthy healed teeth is doable for everybody.
That's exciting, and that's exactly the kind of message that I love to share. I'm all about the baby steps at kitchen stewardship. So I guess what I'm hearing is likely we just don't know what we don't know, and probably sometimes cavities remineralize, and who knows why.
Yeah.
Our body is complex.
Biggest area, someone like, wow, that's arrested decay. Some of those like amazing areas of arrested decay that I've seen have been in homeless people and people who've had a history of drug use. Like, I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome to see the body heal itself.
And they don't, in those cases, they didn't do anything in particular to try to arrest the decay?
No. Like I say that those people healed their teeth by accident. Like I'm sure they weren't thinking about their teeth, but now I know there's a lot of people out there who want to heal their teeth on purpose. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done, and a lot of it's natural stuff.
That's awesome. So I'm sure more research is needed, but it sounds like like if I cut my finger, I don't have to do anything. My body is going to heal itself, and it sounds like teeth have the potential to do that too. Very cool. Thank you so very much, Dr. Judene. You have a great day.
Thanks for having me, Katie.